ever get that sinking feeling, like
Yeah.
in a relationship? Like maybe it's broken and you just can't fix it.
Well, today we're going to do a deep dive into this whole idea of breaking points. You know, those moments when a relationship just feels beyond repair no matter what you do.
Yeah, those are tough, aren't they? And today we'll be using your research to really figure out this whole thing, right? Because
Yeah.
it's like, when do you fight for it?
Yeah.
And when is it better to just walk away?
Exactly. And figuring that out, well, it all kind of starts with understanding what a breaking point even is. And thankfully, the research actually gives us some really helpful ways to think about it instead of just saying, oh, it's different for everyone, which it is, right?
Yeah.
It actually breaks it down into different types of breaking points.
Right, because it's not always like one big dramatic event. Sometimes it really is like a single blow. You think infidelity, that just shatters everything. All that trust,
Mhm.
gone.
Yeah. But other times, it's more like a slow burn. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like death by thousand cuts. It's all these little hurts and disappointments, and maybe you're just, growing apart. It just builds up over time.
Oh, that makes total sense. It's like the difference between a sudden earthquake that just levels everything versus, like you said, slow erosion. Like eventually the foundation is just gone.
Exactly. And that's
Yeah.
what the research goes into, right?
Yeah.
It explains that these breaking points can be kind of categorized. Like, are they internal or are they external? So the internal ones, they're coming from inside the relationship. Like maybe you're not communicating well, or someone's feeling emotionally neglected, or maybe you just over time realize your values don't really match up anymore.
Right, right. Whereas external ones, they're those pressures that are coming from outside the relationship, right? So maybe it's job loss or family stress, or honestly, even just like big societal changes, stuff that puts a strain on the relationship.
Absolutely. And what's so interesting is that how you actually react to these breaking points often depends on your own personal threshold for different things. Like take infidelity. Some people, that's it, done. No questions asked. It's just a total deal breaker.
But for others, it might actually be an opportunity to, do some serious soul searching, like maybe go to couples therapy and, maybe even come out stronger on the other side if, of course, both partners are really ready to put in the work.
And that's really key, right? It's that willingness to really address the root of the problem. Because let's be honest, sometimes clinging to a relationship is not about fighting for it, it's about comfort. Or maybe it's just fear of being alone, all that.
Yeah, and one of the sources had this great point. It said we often confuse comfort with genuine connection. Like, just because you're used to someone, and it's easy to just stay in the routine, doesn't mean it's good for you, doesn't mean you're actually thriving.
It's like choosing to stay in a lukewarm bath when you could be out there swimming in the ocean, experiencing all the amazing things life has to offer.
Oh, I love that analogy. But
Yeah.
it brings up a big question. Like, how do you actually know when it's time to call it quits? What are, the warning signs? Like, help us out here. What should we be looking for?
Well, first things first, there's no magic formula, right?
Huh.
Every relationship is unique. What might be a huge red flag for one couple could be totally manageable for another. But there are some common warning signs, and the research actually highlights a few that we should all, be aware of.
Okay, so, what specifically? Give us the goods.
Okay, well, one big one is this. Negativity, when it's constant. And there's always conflict. It's not just about arguing every now and then. It's this overall feeling of tension, criticism, resentment. Like it just kind of seeks into everything.
So it's more about the emotional climate, not just the number of fights.
Exactly. And another big one, feeling unvalued, feeling unsupported. This can look like, all sorts of things. Maybe your partner is always dismissing your opinions, or they're neglecting your needs, your feelings, or maybe they just constantly put themselves first.
Yeah, and it's not even always about big gestures, is it? It's the little everyday things, right? Like, do they show care and consideration? Or is it, the opposite of that? One source had this really vivid example. It said that if you constantly find yourself apologizing for your partner's behavior to other people, that's a huge red flag.
Yeah, because it means you're making excuses for their disrespect, basically. And that can lead to, losing your own self-respect.
And you know what? Speaking of respect, that's another big one. When it's gone, maybe because of dishonesty or betrayal, or honestly, even just growing apart, it's incredibly hard to rebuild. Like, that foundation is just cracked. So, okay, those are some pretty clear signs, right? But what about that feeling that something's just off? Like maybe the spark is gone, or you're just not, on the same page anymore. Is that a sign of a breaking point?
Oh, absolutely. The research calls this a gradual erosion of connection. It's like,
Hmm.
you're growing distant, emotionally disconnected. Even if there's not like constant fighting or betrayal, it's just there.
And that's where this idea of internal versus external gets really interesting, right? Because sometimes growing apart, it's internal, you just change as people, and maybe those paths diverge.
But it can also be external.
Yep.
One source talks about how major life transitions, like changing jobs or moving, having kids,
Yeah.
that can totally change the dynamics in a relationship, right? Put a strain on things.
So it's not always someone's fault, right? Sometimes life just throws these curveballs and it tests you. It tests the relationship.
Exactly. And that's really what we're talking about when we talk about resilience. Because sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is not clinging on. It's recognizing when holding on is actually hurting you more.
Wow, that's powerful. And it leads us to this other big topic, forgiveness. Because let's be real, relationships, they're messy.
Yeah.
People make mistakes.
Oh, yeah. And the research actually shows that there are all these different views on forgiveness, especially when it comes to big betrayals, like infidelity. Some people believe love conquers all, you can forgive anything. Others, certain things, they're just deal breakers. No way back.
So how do we even begin to figure that out? Like how do we reconcile these different viewpoints? It's complicated.
Well, I think first we have to understand that forgiveness, it's personal. It looks different for everyone, right?
Yeah.
Your experiences, your values, they all play a part.
And even when we do forgive, it doesn't automatically mean staying together, right? Sometimes it's about like finding peace for ourselves.
Exactly. And that's where the research gets really interesting. It talks about different types of forgiveness. Like there's conditional forgiveness, like I forgive you if you do X, Y, Z. But then there's unconditional forgiveness. That's about letting go of the anger and resentment regardless of what the other person does.
Whoa, that's a big difference. So it's not always about like saying what they did was okay. It's about, like you said, freeing ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which brings up this big question. How do you know? When is forgiveness even possible? And when is it just, time to walk away?
Hmm.
How do you weigh all that hurt against the possibility of healing?
That's a tough one. And it's something we're going to keep digging into as we keep going deeper with all this. This whole idea of breaking points. It's a lot.
Yeah, we'll get into like the practical stuff, how to really assess the situation, communicate with your partner, and ultimately make a decision that's right for you. Okay, so, we've talked about how to spot those potential breaking points, right? But now comes the really hard part. What do you actually do about it? Do you like dig in your heels and fight? Or is it time to, accept it's over and walk away?
Yeah, that's got to be where so many people get stuck, right? Just frozen, not knowing what to do.
Oh, totally. I mean, it's understandable. Relationships are complicated. There's no easy answer. But you know what? The research we've been looking at, it
Yeah.
actually offers some pretty good guidance on how to navigate all this.
Okay, so let's say you've recognized some of those red flags, those warning signs. Maybe there's negativity or you're feeling unvalued. What do you do next?
Well, the research really emphasizes this. Honest self-reflection. Like really take some time to look inward, examine your feelings,
Yeah.
your needs. What are you hoping to get out of this relationship? What are your non-negotiables? Those core values and needs that you just can't compromise on.
Because sometimes, let's be honest, we stay for all the wrong reasons, right?
Yeah.
Out of habit or maybe fear of being alone or a sense of obligation. Like, we should stay.
Right, exactly. And it's so important to separate those external pressures from what you really want deep down.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, okay, if I could just like wave a magic wand and create my perfect relationship, what would that even look like? And then you got to compare that to what you have now.
Oh, that's good. It's like a reality check,
Right.
It forces you to be honest.
Yeah, totally. And once you've kind of done that internal work, the next step is talking. Communicate.
Yeah.
Talk to your partner. And not in a blaming way, right? Not like you did this, but from this place of vulnerability, like, hey, I want us to understand each other better.
Oh, that's way easier said than done, though, right? Especially when everyone's like all emotional.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the research, it really stresses how important clear communication is. Use I statements. Like, talk about your feelings, your needs, and be specific, about the behaviors that are bothering you. Like, instead of saying, you're so inconsiderate, try saying something like, I feel hurt and disrespected when you make plans without talking to me.
That makes so much more sense. It's about the impact, right? Not attacking the person.
Right. And just as important, listen. Really try to see things from their side, even if you don't agree. Ask questions. validate their feelings.
Because I guess at the end of the day, a healthy relationship means you're both willing to, try to see things from each other's perspective.
Exactly. And that brings up another key point from the research. Reciprocity. Is this a two-way street? Are both of you putting in the work? Or is one person carrying the whole relationship?
Oh, that's a good question. Because you can't make someone change, right? If
Yeah.
they don't want to.
Nope. And sometimes, as tough as it is to admit, the kindest thing you can do for yourself is walk away,
Yeah.
especially if your needs are constantly ignored.
That's true. But how do you know? When is it really truly time to call it quits?
Well, the research has some things to think about. First, what's the problem? Are we talking about like little things,
Yeah.
communication styles, that kind of stuff can be worked on, right?
Hmm.
Maybe with therapy. Or are these like big fundamental differences, values, life goals?
Yeah, like arguing about who does the dishes is different from, disagreeing about whether or not to have kids.
Exactly. And then there's this. Are you seeing the same patterns over and over? Or is this like a one-time thing that you can learn from?
Because if it's the same fight constantly, maybe you're just not compatible.
Yeah. And finally, how is all this affecting you? Is it stressing you out,
Hmm.
making you anxious? Is your health suffering?
Because a relationship should be a good thing, right? It should make you happy, not make you miserable.
Exactly. And if you're always feeling drained or resentful or like you're walking on eggshells, well, then you got to ask yourself, is this really good for me?
That's such an important reminder. But okay, let's say you've thought about all this and you've decided to fight for it, to try to make it work. What can you actually do?
Well, the research, it really stresses this. Get professional help. Go to couples therapy. It can be such a good space, safe, structured. You can learn to communicate better, break those bad patterns, and just figure out how to resolve conflict without, blowing up.
Therapy can also help you uncover like those deeper issues, right? That might be feeding into all this.
Yeah, for sure. Like maybe there's past trauma or attachment issues or even just like communication patterns you learned from your family growing up. It's all connected.
It is. And even if your partner's not into therapy at first, it's worth like having a real conversation about it. Explain why you think it could help. So besides therapy, what else can couples do to like mend things?
One thing that comes up a lot in the research is this. Create a culture of appreciation. Make it a point to, express gratitude for the good things, even the little things. Write a note. Give a compliment. Just say thank you more.
Yeah, it's easy to focus on the negative, especially when things are rough. But focusing on the positive, that can really shift things.
Big time. And along with appreciation, make time for each other. Quality time. Date nights. Even if it's just staying in and cooking dinner together, the key is to put the phones away. Disconnect. Really connect.
It's about those moments, right? Those shared moments that remind you why you fell in love in the first place.
Exactly. And last but not least, be patient. Rebuilding trust, intimacy, that takes time. It takes work. There will be bumps along the way, but if you're both really committed, you
Yeah,
can heal, you can grow.
that's good to hear. But
Mhm.
what about those times when, you've tried everything and it's just not working? Deep down, you know it's over. What then?
That's tough. It's a hard truth to face. But the research really wants to make this clear. Ending a relationship, it's not a failure. It takes courage to do that. It's about self-respect.
Yeah, sometimes choosing your own happiness means being alone for a while.
And remember, even if a relationship ends, that doesn't erase everything.
Right.
The love, the memories, it all mattered.
That's a good way to look at it. And it brings us back to forgiveness, which we were talking about earlier. Even when a relationship is over, forgiveness can be so important for for healing. It's like we've been through like this whole emotional obstacle course. Breaking points, makeups, breakups, heavy stuff.
Yeah, it is. But what's amazing to me is that even when it's like, your heart is breaking and you don't know what to do, the research keeps coming back to this growth, transformation.
Yeah.
It's not just about the breaking point. It's about what you learn from it.
That's actually really hopeful because breakups, they're tough. But the research, it kind of challenges us to see them differently, right? Not as failures, but as opportunities.
Yeah. Like, have you heard that saying, sometimes good things have to fall apart so better things can fall together? It's not about pretending it doesn't hurt, but it's about realizing that even those really painful experiences, they teach you something about yourself, about what you need, what you want.
So even in the middle of all that heartbreak, there's this chance to like really understand yourself better.
Oh, for sure. One of the sources call it like reclaiming your power. Because when you let go of a relationship that's not working, you're basically saying, hey, I deserve better. I deserve to be with someone who treats me right.
And realizing that you deserve better, that's got to be so empowering.
Totally. It's like you went through this fire and you came out the other side and you're stronger, more resilient, and you know what you want.
Okay, yeah, I'm really liking this whole idea of breakups being this like catalyst for growth. But I want to go back to forgiveness for a minute. We talked about it before, and you said that even when a relationship ends, forgiveness can be a big part of healing.
Oh, 100%. And to be clear, forgiveness doesn't mean you're saying what happened was okay. Right. It's not about them. It's about you.
So what does it actually look like then to forgive someone, especially when it's hard?
The research talks about it as like this process. First, you got to acknowledge the pain, process all those emotions, and then you choose to let go of the resentment, the anger.
And that's going to be so hard, right? Especially when someone really hurt you.
It does. It takes a lot of strength.
Nope.
And one source, it had this analogy, and I love it. It said, holding on to resentment is like carrying around a heavy rock with you everywhere you go. It weighs you down, and it stops you from moving on.
Wow, that's a good one. So forgiveness is like putting down that rock.
Yes. It's about freeing yourself from the past so you can, move forward and feel lighter.
Okay, that makes sense. And it's a process, right? Not like a one-time thing.
Exactly. It takes time. You might stumble along the way, but the research makes it clear. It's worth it.
Okay.
Because in the end, forgiveness, it's about finding peace for yourself.
And when you find that peace, you can move on, right? Start a new chapter.
You got it. And you know what? All those lessons you learned, even from the relationships that didn't work out, they can help you build something even better next time.
I like that. So as we wrap up this whole deep dive into breaking points and all the messiness of relationships, I want to leave our listeners with a question.
Ooh, I like it. Hit us.
Think about this. What's the one thing you absolutely need in a relationship? That one non-negotiable that makes it worth fighting for?
Because at the end of the day, relationships, they're supposed to be good. They're supposed to bring you joy and support,
Right.
not drain you and make you feel bad.
And when you know your worth and what you deserve, well, you make better choices. Choices that lead to real love, the kind that lasts.
We hope this deep dive gave you some things to think about, maybe even helped you on your own journey.
Remember, you're worthy of love and respect and happiness. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away and make space for something amazing.